Clint, you've spoken out about the recent wildfires tearing through California. What is it that you think people are missing? Caroline asked, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. Clint didn't speak immediately. The silence felt almost suffocating as he gathered his thoughts. Then, with a deliberate pause, he finally spoke, his voice low but firm. This isn't just nature's fury. There's a pattern, Caroline. And it's not random. This is something much darker, orchestrated behind the scenes. The room fell deathly silent. Caroline's smile faltered as she processed his words. This wasn't the kind of interview she had planned. The producers behind the scenes exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to handle the direction this conversation was taking. Clint's eyes never left the camera, and with chilling calmness he continued. The areas most devastated aren't just wildfire-prone. They've been chosen, targeted, for a reason. The camera again zoomed in on Clint Eastwood, sitting in a sleek television studio, his rugged face betraying a mix of resolve and urgency. Across from him sat Caroline Hart, the ever-polished host who had an uncanny ability to make even the most tense interviews feel controlled. But today, the atmosphere in the room was electric, charged with anticipation. The tension in the room thickened as Caroline, now visibly unsettled, leaned forward, her polished exterior beginning to crack. A pattern? Clint, what exactly are you suggesting? She asked, her voice quieter now, almost in disbelief. Clint's jaw tightened, his gaze unwavering as he leaned in closer to the camera, his words deliberate and chilling. These fires aren't just natural disasters, they're strategic, and they're not the result of poor policy or oversight. These fires are accelerating, feeding off something unnatural. I've spoken with scientists, firefighters, and people who've lived in these areas their entire lives. None of them have ever seen fires like this before. It's as if the conditions are being manipulated, amplified by forces unseen. Clint paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The studio was tense, the hum of equipment and the faint shuffle of papers the only sounds that filled the air. Caroline, trying to regain control, pushed further. But Clint, are you suggesting this is deliberate? That someone is behind these fires? Clint's eyes narrowed as he spoke again, his voice colder this time. It's not about lighting a match, Caroline. It's about creating the conditions that lead to disaster. The areas most affected? They align with land development projects, resource extraction sites, and power-hungry agendas. If you follow the money, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The room felt heavier, the silence more palpable, as Caroline's professional composure began to slip. So you believe these fires are not just natural disasters? She pressed, her voice tight with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. No, Clint replied, his voice steely and unflinching. These fires were never an accident. This is bigger than just the flames. It's about who benefits when the ashes settle. Clint sat back in his chair, his hands resting on the armrests, his gaze never leaving Caroline. He could see the skepticism in her eyes, but that didn't matter now. He had seen too much, uncovered too many threads to let this go. The truth had to come out, even if it meant shattering the comfortable narratives that had been built around these fires. The truth behind these fires isn't just about devastation, Clint continued, his tone hardening. It's about what happens after the smoke clears. These aren't just homes being destroyed, Caroline. These are obstacles to billion-dollar developments, to land acquisitions, and to power moves that could change the landscape of California forever. Caroline's face showed signs of disbelief, but she pushed forward. So you're saying these fires were set in areas that are ripe for development? But why? What's the real motivation behind this? Clint's voice dropped lower, more dangerous, as he shared what he had uncovered. Take Malibu, for instance. These aren't just family homes. They were standing in the way of massive development projects. The fires, they cleared the way. Entire neighborhoods, once protected by environmental regulations, are now ripe for commercial and residential development. It's like the flames acted as a reset button for these projects. The audience watching at home, even through the TV screen, could feel the gravity of Clint's words. Images of scorched landscapes and destroyed properties flashed on the screen, amplifying the pain in Clint's voice. These fires burned hotter, faster, and with more intensity than anything I've seen before. It wasn't just nature at work, it was a carefully orchestrated event, a chance to clear the land for those who stand to profit the most, he continued, his eyes narrowing. Clint turned back to Caroline, his expression calm, but filled with the weight of someone who had seen too much to ignore. It's all about the money, Caroline. These fires didn't just burn homes, they burned away the last bit of protection these lands had, leaving them wide open for exploitation. The room felt colder now, the weight of Clint's words hanging in the air. Caroline, trying to regain some control, leaned forward once again, but her professional demeanor was slipping. So, Clint, you're saying that these fires were deliberately set in motion to clear the land for development? That there's a bigger conspiracy at play? Clint's eyes never wavered, his voice dropping to a near whisper. It's not a theory, Caroline, it's the truth. These fires were allowed to burn with ferocity because they cleared the path for those who wanted these lands. People in power, with money to make and regulations to sidestep. And it's not just a California problem, this is happening everywhere. Caroline was visibly shaken, but she pressed on. And who, Clint? Who is behind this? Who stands to gain from all this destruction? Clint exhaled slowly, his expression hardening as he spoke. The developers, the corporations, the ones who look at a wildfire and see dollar signs, the ones who turn tragedy into opportunity. They don't just rebuild, they take over, they grab land for a fraction of its value, using tragedy as their leverage. These aren't just fires, they're opportunities for them to get richer. He paused, letting the silence sink in, his words already planting seeds of doubt in the minds of viewers across the nation. But don't just take my word for it. The documents are out there. The emails, the memos. There's a trail that leads directly to them. And they don't want you to know. They want to keep the narrative under wraps, and they'll do whatever it takes to stop us from asking the right questions. Caroline sat still for a moment, struggling to process the depth of the conspiracy Clint had just unveiled. So what happens next? She asked, her voice faltering slightly. Clint stood up, his gaze unwavering. The fight for the truth doesn't stop here. The public is already waking up. People are starting to ask the hard questions. This isn't just about a few $1 million or a few 100 acres of land. This is about holding those responsible accountable for the destruction they've caused. As Clint turned toward the exit, the studio fell silent. His final words echoed in the air. When the fires are out and the smoke clears, the real battle begins. And this time it's not just about fighting fire, it's about fighting the greed behind it.